Hi, my name is Leomar Mota. I would like to talk to you about George Washington. This presentation will explore the legacy and contributions he has made to society. He was the first president of United States and the commander-in-chief of society. He was the first president of United States and the commander-in-chief of Continental Army in the American War of Independence. In the United States, he is considered the father of the country. He is also considered one of the founding fathers of the United States, along with others. First of all, I'll talk about his early years. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, in the British colony of Virginia, to Augustine Washington and Mary Washington. The eldest of Augustine and Mary Washington's six children spent much of his childhood at Ferry Farm, a plantation near Fredericksburg, Virginia. After the death of his father, at the age of 11, George went to the tutelage of his older stepbrother Lawrence, where he met a wider and more refined world, since Lawrence was married to one of the great heiresses of the region and used to rub shoulders with the high society of Virginia. Few details about Washington's early education are known. But families like his typically were taught at home by private tutors or attended private schools. As a teenager, Washington, who had shown an aptitude for math, became a successful surveyor. His surveying expeditions into the Virginia wilderness earned him to begin acquiring land of his own, moving on to an officer and gentleman farmer. In December 1752, Washington, who had no previous military experience, was made a commander of the Virginia militia. He saw action in the French and Indian War and was eventually put in charge of all of Virginia's militia forces. In January 1759, he married Martha Dandridge Custis, a wealthy widow with two children. In the ensuing years, Washington expanded Mount Vernon from 2,000 acres into an 8,000-acre property with 5 farms. He grew a variety of crops, including wheat and corn. He was deeply interested in farming. We'll move to George Washington during the American Revolution. By the late 1760s, Washington had experienced firsthand the effects of rising taxes imposed on American colonies by the British, and came to believe that it was in the best interest of the colonies to declare independence from England. Washington served as a delegate to the First Continental Congress in 1774 in Philadelphia. By the time the Second Continental Congress convened a year later, the American Revolution had begun in earnest, and Washington was named Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Washington proved to be a great general. His strength lay in his ability to keep the struggling colonial army together. His troops were poorly lacked food, ammunition, and others. However, Washington was able to give them the direction and motivation. His leadership during the winter of 1778 at Valley Forge was a testament to his power to inspire his men to keep going. Over the course of the grueling 8-year war, the colonial forces consistently held their own against the British. In October 1781, the Continental forces were able to capture British troops in the Battle of Yorktown. This action effectively ended the Revolutionary War, and Washington was declared a national hero. Now let's look at America's first president. In 1787, he was asked to attend the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia and head the committee Impressive leadership there convinced the delegates that he was by far the most qualified man to become the nation's first president. At first, Washington balked. He wanted to return home, but public opinion was so strong that eventually he gave in. The first presidential election was held in 1789 and Washington won handily. The 57-year-old Washington was inaugurated on April 30, 1789 in New York City. He lived in New York and Philadelphia. While in office, he signed a bill establishing a future permanent U.S. capital along the Potomac River. The city later named Washington, D.C. in his honor. And then I'll go on to George Washington's accomplishments. The United States was a small nation when Washington took office, consisting of 11 states and 4 million people, and there was no precedent for how the new president should conduct domestic or foreign business. Mindful that his actions would like how future presidents were expected to govern, Washington worked hard to set an example of fairness, prudence, and integrity. In foreign matters, he supported cordial relations with other countries. He signed a bill establishing the First National Bank, the Bank of the United States. He signed the first United States copyright law, protecting the copyrights of authors. He also signed the first Thanksgiving Proclamation. During Washington's presidency, Congress passed the first federal revenue law, a tax on distilled spirits. Then he dissolved the Whiskey Rebellion in one of the first major tests of the authority of the national government. Under Washington leadership, the state ratified the Bill of Rights. Moving on to second term, Washington issued the Proclamation of Neutrality to avoid entering the 1793 war between Great Britain and France. But French Minister to the United States, Edmond Genet, boldly flaunted the proclamation, attempting to set up American ports as French military bases and gain support for his cause in the western United States. His meddling caused a stir and making consensus building more difficult. In 1795, Washington signed the Treaty of Amity, Commerce and Navigation between His Britannic Majesty and the United States of America. It helped the U.S. avoid war with Great Britain. Washington administration signed two other influential international treaties, known as the Treaty of San Lorenzo. He established friendly relations between the United States and Spain. The Treaty of Tripoli, signed the following year, gave American cheap access to Mediterranean shipping lanes in exchange for a yearly tribute to the Pasha of Tripoli. And finally, George Washington's retirement and death. In 1796, he declined to serve a third term. He finally retired. He urged the new nation to maintain the highest standards and to keep involvement with foreign powers to a minimum. He returned to Mount Vernon and devoted his attentions to making the plantation as productive as it had been before he became president. In December 1799, he caught a cold after inspecting his property's terrain. The cold developed into a throat infection. Then he died in December 14, age of 67. He left one of the most enduring legacies of any American in history, known as the father of his country. His face appears on the US dollar bill and quarter, and dozens of US schools, towns and counties, as well as the state of Washington and the nation's capital city, are named for him. I'll conclude very briefly by saying that he also had a lot of money, and he's thought to have been the richest US president, with an estimated net worth of 580 million in today's dollars. He not only earned more than other presidents, but he also owned